Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Sorting Hat Podcast, the podcast where everything and anything can and will be sorted into the various houses of Hogwarts. I, as always, am your host, Michael Barryte, joined by my co-host, Brice.
Let me see your feet. I'm attracted to feet.
That wasn't what I was expecting as your thing. I was expecting you to maybe tell me to say sweetie. What again, but... Oh, man. The basic conceit of the show is that we have a guest who's knowledgeable on a various subject, and we sort things into the various houses of Hogwarts based on the subjects within that realm. We're joined once again by Eric Zipper, writer for Screen Rant, improviser at Comedy Sports Los Angeles.
What's up, nerds?
Eric, welcome back.
Thank you.
That was my Tarantino impression.
No, I got you.
Because he has a foot fetish.
I know.
It's true.
He went on Tyra Banks, and Tyra Banks just had people come out in their bare feet, I think, or she took her shoes off, and she's like, are you aroused? And he's like, yeah, I like that.
That is a very weird thing to do.
I think it was Tyra Banks. I can't remember.
That's
if it was
incredibly strange. That said, we're sorting not fetishes, but Tarantino's filmography thus far.
I wish we were sorting Tarantino's fetishes. Foot fetish is a helpful puff.
Right, but that film set includes Reservoir Dogs, Pulp Fiction, Jackie Brown, both Kill Bill volumes 1 and 2, Death Proof, Inglourious Bastards, Django Unchained, and The Hateful Eight.
Yep.
So we're going to go through those chronologically.
Zipper, what was the first Tarantino film you saw?
The first one I saw, I think, was his first. I think it was Reservoir Dogs.
Yeah, and what about these films that you're like, oh, this is the director for me? What are things about his shit that you like? If somebody hasn't seen any of them.
Yeah, he's known for his dialogue, which was definitely probably one of the first things that I was like a kid and teenager that I was just like, whoa, this dialogue is like nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, the thing I think I appreciate most about him is his structure. I think that his movies tend to be structured in a way that seems chaotic, but is actually super controlled.
Okay, cool. And what about you, Michael? What was the first films you saw?
I think the first film I saw was either Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs.
Mm-hmm.
And like Zipper said, in the case of, Pulp Fiction and some of the other ones, he definitely does things that break sequence or chronology as far as just narrative structure goes, but then it's all very purposefully linked up. And so there's information, even with Hateful Eight, they do some time jumpy sort of stuff that allows more narrative excitement. And he's also kind of an ultra violent director as far as to the point of comedy.
I'll tell you, the first time I ever saw a Tarantino film, spoiler for later, the first image I ever saw of a Tarantino film was the Gimp Mask rape scene in Pulp Fiction.
You jumped right to that scene?
I turned on TV when it was on, and I was 12, and we had my family for some reason they gave us the movie channels as a free preview or something like they sometimes do when you have cable but you don't have the movie channels.
Yeah.
I turned it on. It was that scene. I thought I was a very sheltered Christian child, so I thought I was seeing some sort of pornography.
Starring Bruce Willis.
And so I changed it. Well, I didn't really, I don't remember, I think I changed it before Bruce Willis even came on or whatever. Because I was like, oh, this is not something I'm supposed to be seeing. And then it was years later that I rewatched that film properly and knew what the context was. Because I was like, these rednecks are raping these two men. What's happening? And one of them's in a weird mask or something. Was he in a cage? I don't remember.
Yeah, he's kept in a weird.
Yeah, we'll get into the movie later, but that was my first impression, and it's kind of just always stuck with me. Agreed, ultra violent, sexual violence, racial violence. It's all crazy, over the top.
Yeah, he's very stylistic, but he's also a huge lover of cinema.
Mm-hmm.
And that shows through all of his films because the homages are deep and many.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the ultimate
mixtape
filmmaker.
Shall we dive straight in?
Let's do it.
So Reservoir Dogs is our first one, and we'll be doing like brief synopses before we.
And you said that we're just going to cover the ones he directed, right?
Yes. So we're not touching on like True Romance
Or From Dusk Till Dawn.
right, which he's great in.
Yeah, he is really good in that movie.
Take us away on Reservoir Dogs.
All right, so Reservoir Dogs is about some guys that instead of names have some colors that they go by. They try to rob a place, everything goes wrong, and they end up in a warehouse where they don't trust each other.
Yep. They're trying to steal some diamonds. They believe that one of them ratted them out.
Because the cops showed up.
Yep. I forget which one is bleeding out in the car.
Mr. Orange is bleeding out, played by Tim Roth.
Yeah. And things escalate very quickly. It only helps that I believe it's they have a cop that he takes the ear from, right?
Yeah, there is a cop that one of them takes hostage and cuts an ear off of.
It's a whole degree of things that could not be worse for them only getting worse.
Yeah. And it's a whole pressure cooker situation because they spend most of it in one room.
Right.
And the only time we leave that room is for occasional flashbacks.
Yeah. I mean, it's a film that hits the ground running.
It's true.
And really doesn't slow down much.
Nope.
There's the part of me from a historical standpoint, just getting straight into sorting, that feels that it's a Gryffindor.
Interesting. Why do you think that?
Because it is a bold as hell maneuver as far as like, this is my like first feature. Here's what I'm doing. It's structurally pretty unbalanced. It's very violent. It's also, but like at the same time, while it's fairly light on its feet, like it takes its fucking time at certain points for like
when it gets into the flashbacks, it slows way down.
Well, and even when they're in the warehouse, like with certain monologue bits, I mean, Tarantino loves his fucking monologue.
Yeah.
And so suddenly like it doesn't become molasses, but like it's drawing you out a little bit. It's just like being a little shifty and like keeping you, because everybody's just so wonderfully unhinged at that point.
Like, is it worth taking into consideration that like there is some speculation that he might have like intentionally or unintentionally lifted too much from that 87 like Hong Kong action film? I'm looking at it's called like City on Fire, and like people say like there are a lot of similarities between this film and this other film. And the way that like, a lot of famous directors have kind of been accused in the past, especially in their earlier works, of like, like at what point does it stop being an homage or a pastiche and like straight up like cross into the potential territory of plagiarism? Mm-hmm. What do y'all think of that?
I mean, I would say that it's that weird thing, especially in Hollywood, where you're like, oh, Ants in a Bug's Life came out roughly the same time. That's weird.
Well, these films didn't come out at the same time.
No, I understand that. But like with him being as much of a film nut as he is, like there is certainly the possibility that he did see it. There's also the possibility that he lifted it. That said, none of his other films are like, at least as far as I'm aware of, are direct ripoffs, and I like to believe that it was purely coincidental.
Or maybe he just like felt like these were like the sort of images and messages that like an American audience would appreciate, but they'd have to be recontextualized.
Right.
Perhaps.
It is interesting with someone who works so heavily in homage, trying to figure out where that line is.
Yeah.
I feel like he generally does a pretty good job of taking those pieces and making them into something new.
Like I'm by no means being like like we're veering it. I'm not saying like we're veering into Ghost in the Shell,
but he does straight up lift scenes from other movies sometimes. Like,
no, I mean like almost every great filmmaker, it feels like just like takes things like they steal like a genius or whatever they say.
And some of it is unintentional, like. But other times, like in the case of Tarantino, just being like, I am lifting this like very notable thing, or like fight choreographers will like just recycle like action bits from, you know, older like various martial arts, like classic kung fu films.
And sometimes that commitment to stealing can be like in its own way very artful. Like Aronofsky lifted straight up complete scene compositions, like scene setups from they're like the most I think it's called Perfect Blue. It's like a feature-length anime, and he straight up just steals complete scenes, like the composition of it. Maybe I can like give you a link to it, Michael. Even though it has nothing to do with this episode, of where like in Requiem for a Dream and Black Swan, they're both sequences that are complete lifted like source material from this film.
That's very bizarre.
Yeah, and so like I'm always like very curious, like the passion to like recreate something you love with slightly different context. Like where does that fall ethically within like, you know, creation and stuff? I have no idea where I'm going with this.
That's for the courts to decide.
Oh, God.
For Tarantino, I think that lifting has always seemed super earnest to me. He just is so like excited about things and loves it so much.
Yeah,
I agree. This thing is the coolest thing ever.
I was just saying, like, should that be taken into consideration as we
For the
sort?
sorting?
I mean, if it were a very purposeful lift without looking to pay any credit, then it probably is a Slytherin-ass move.
Yeah, but he's not like James Cameron, who like stole the idea from the Terminator from Harlan Ellison and then had to go to court with Harlan Ellison and lost. In the first release of the Terminator, his name wasn't included, but he actually like took James Cameron to court because James Cameron bragged about stealing the idea in an interview. He's a fucking idiot. Sorry, James Cameron, you're an idiot. I don't think that's the case with Tarantino. I agree with you. I think he just loves it. He probably would be like, yeah, this is exactly where I got it from. You should go fucking watch that movie because it's better than mine.
That to me seems very Hufflepuffy of like, I just love this thing so much that I'm going to take it without thinking. I just love it and want everyone else to love it.
Tarantino is probably, in my opinion, a Hufflepuff.
Yeah.
Oh, for sure.
But his Reservoir Dogs.
Right.
I still stand by my Gryffindor stance. And there's also, admittedly, like, you could maybe make the argument for Ravenclaw.
I think Ravenclaw because it's a kind of showy deconstruction of the genre. And there's just something about the way that it approaches its structure that is very just like, look how clever this is. Like, look how smart I am.
Fair. I mean, the next one up on the docket, I think, is like also very Ravenclaw.
That would be Pulp Fiction?
Yes.
Do you want my one sentence synopsis of Pulp Fiction?
Yes, yeah. I'd love a one sentence synopsis on Pulp Fiction.
All right, so there are these two guys that work for a gangster, and they wear suits, and they get into some trouble, while at the same time, a boxer played by Bruce Willis gets into separate trouble, and their troubles overlap.
And there's a briefcase.
With maybe a soul in it.
This is the John Travolta comeback film. Like his career was like not doing super great before this, and this like definitely like transformed the way that audience saw him like as like a legitimate actor. So, like,
apparently, Tarantino was criticized for wanting to cast Travolta in the role and was told that he could get anybody. So why would you want somebody washed up?
Damn.
Yeah, he was right though. Travolta killed it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. No, I can't imagine anybody else in these roles of the two dudes in the suits, like him and Sam Jackson. Sam Jackson especially is like, he's in more of Tarantino's films than he's not, right?
He's in a lot of them.
He's in
some of them. It's little cameos,
right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
was this the first one that he was in?
Yes.
Okay.
And he got nominated for an Oscar for it. He's amazing.
He fucking deserved it, dude. This movie is also non-linear. We'll take that into account.
Like much more so than Reservoir Dogs.
I have to ask, Reed, was your first complete viewing of Pulp Fiction affected by your partial viewing of the gimp suit scene when you were younger?
I for sure had it was definitely that thing of like, oh, this is that movie I remember seeing. It like surprised me, like as it got, because I probably went like from age like 11 or 12 when I initially saw it to adulthood, like 19, 20 when I saw it again. So I didn't remember any of the actors when I had initially watched it. It was only like for a minute or whatever. And then it slowly dawned on me as I was watching this film, which I now consider to be great. I was like, oh, this is that scene that I thought was fucked up porn. I'm glad that this is not a fucked up porn that I accidentally saw as a child, like a snuff film or something.
Yeah, that must have been nice to realize.
Because in the film, like these two people who are like, one of them is like not necessarily like. This film's pretty sympathetic with all of its characters since it has like multiple narratives. So even the people who would be considered like the bad guys of the film, like you can kind
Ving Rhames as like the gangster.
Yeah. Like everybody, what I like about and appreciate about this film is like everybody, because it is very much a film about desire and wanting to like to really like take it like it seems like take a chance to get what you want in life. And all of the characters, like you can see the justification for why they're doing all those things,
right?
And I always think that's like so important, like critically important to a film. Isn't this also the one where Christopher Walken like shit out a watch?
Yes,
has a whole monologue. What's interesting, so there is a cut of this movie that you can find, I think, on YouTube where someone recut it chronologically, and in that cut, the watch monologue is the first thing in the movie.
Because that's when Bruce Willis is a child.
A kid, yeah.
So I don't remember that was Bruce Willis as a child.
Yeah, Christopher Walken is telling young Bruce Willis, he's like talking straight at the camera and about how he had to shove the watch up his ass.
So that we understand why Bruce Willis wants that watch so badly, and it's because it was up Christopher Walken's butthole.
That's why?
That's why.
Yeah. I mean, oh lordy.
Oh man, so where do we think this one lands?
I still stand firmly that it's a Ravenclaw
because of all the like non-linear chronological shenanigans.
That and like, I mean, not even that, but like there are so many moving pieces, even amongst like when it runs chronologically. You're like, oh. All of these like happenstances are converging in such a perfect way.
I'm always like, am I supposed to remember who all of these people are? This is like an episode of Game of Thrones. There's so many people's names to remember.
And I like the way that you
show offy.
I like the way that you put emphasis on game in Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones.
It's the Game of Thrones.
It's a Song of Ice and Fire. But
wait, how do you say it?
Game of Thrones.
Well, you're not playing. It's not a throne. Like, it's a game to get a throne.
Right, but the throne is truly the thing that everybody wants. The game is just a subsequent thing you do
Game
to
of Thrones.
You're trying to get the throne, therefore you must play games.
When I watch my TV.
All right, we're going to need to back up right now. Because now you're just purposefully
when
trolling.
You watch your television shows?
Oh, television.
Yeah.
Yes, I understand. I understand. Just.
All right, so how are we sorting Pulp Fiction?
Just making my skin crawl.
I think it's probably a Ravenclaw.
Oh, wait. This allows you to bring up
Ravenclaw?
This allows you to bring up the point that you wanted to earlier that we had a private DM exchange about. You said, so Reed has a tendency to call hamburger sandwiches.
What?
Which I think is stupid as hell.
All right, who am I going to take the judgment of? Two idiots who, like, I don't even know if you've ever eaten a hamburger sandwich before, or am I going to take it from the word of Mr. Dave Thomas, the founder of Wendy's, star of its commercials during my childhood, and on his sign it says, "Come have an old-fashioned hamburger sandwich."
Yeah, that's one out of many burger places.
But you, and this is the reason this shady bitch didn't say why, because I was already burning him because somebody tweeted at him and then he like said, "I had a great time," and then he said, "'Twas fun." And I was like, all right, Renaissance Fair, 'twas.
Oh, also, to get exactly the Twitter conversation.
Yeah, just read receipts.
Reed writes, "'Twas," draws an arrow to it. You never get to make fun of, quote, trousers or, quote, hamburger sandwich again. Also,
I also say trousers trousers instead of pants.
Like, always?
Not necessarily always, but one time I was like, I need to go buy some trousers, and you lost your goddamn mind.
I have no memory of that, which is
Yeah.
the funny part. So when you brought up trousers, I was like, I've not roasted you on trousers.
I internalize very benign slights, okay? So
It's true.
I don't hold a grudge over like serious shit, but if you like make fun of a way I sneeze, I think about it years later.
To which I then responded with, psh, twas is way more in than either of those.
Nah, bitch, the last
To
time
which-
I heard twas was when someone thought it was the night before Christmas.
To which you responded, we'll settle this on the mic. And now we are.
I don't want to get involved.
No,
in
Zipper,
this.
you're involved.
You think twas, like TWAS, like it was, is a way that normal contemporary people speak.
More than hamburger sandwich, maybe.
Fuck y'all. Is that plain enough English for you? Fuck y'all. All right.
Yeah, no, that one we can completely.
People say that all the time.
Yeah,
Like in
completely on the level.
Tarantino films.
Right. We're back, guys. So, I mean, how do we feel? Is it a Ravenclaw?
Yeah, that's fine.
I'm happy calling Pulp Fiction a Ravenclaw.
All right.
The next one that's on the
Jackie
docket.
Brown.
Oh wait, we forgot the episode of ER that he directed.
We're not talking about the television he directed. And was that when George Clooney was still on ER, though?
God,
I
I
think
hope
so.
so.
It was 95, so I think it was.
Because that would then perhaps explain the connection
The Dusk
with
Till
Dusk Till
Dawn.
Dawn,
Yeah.
and then just being like, yo, I directed an episode with him. I'm sure we can get him. And also at that time, he was hot shit.
So I also take it to mean that we are not going to be covering the episode of Jimmy Kimmel Live that Tarantino directed.
Which episode was that? Who was the guest?
It's from 2004.
Uh-huh.
Let me go into this, see if it'll say.
Did he direct the whole episode, or was there like a bit or like a thing
Y'all
that he
think I
did?
did some research. I just went to IMDb and saw this and wanted to razz Michael. I don't think it specifies here.
Well, I am disappointed now.
But Jimmy Kimmel was the host and he played himself.
Sure. That's good to know. I was concerned.
Gryffindor for sure then.
Yes. So, Jackie Brown, which is an adaptation.
Yes, it's an adaptation of an Elmore Leonard novel called Rum Punch. It's Tarantino's only adaptation to date.
Mm-hmm. Give us the single sentence synopsis.
Great. I haven't seen this one in a little while, but I'm pretty sure that it's about a flight attendant that gets caught up in some trouble when she smuggles money for a drug runner played by Sam Jackson, and also Robert De Niro plays a sad sack, and the flight attendant falls in love with a bail bondsman.
Oh, yeah. I totally forgot that Robert De Niro was in this. And
Yeah, he's great in it.
He's crazy.
I haven't seen this one.
De Niro is playing like super against type. He's playing this very like downtrodden, like kind of like pathetic dude.
That rules.
He's phenomenal in it. Also, Michael Keaton is in it, and he's like flirting with wow, I'm blanking on who plays Jackie Brown. The
Pam Grier.
You forgot Pam Grier's name?
I'm like one to always forget who
Oh no, I
plays
do
who.
too. I just have a crush on her. So.
Oh, okay.
Fun fact about Michael Keaton's character, that character is in several Elmore Leonard novels, and so Michael Keaton played the same character in Out of Sight, which was an Elmore Leonard adaptation by Steven Soderbergh.
Oh whoa.
So same character in two movies by totally different filmmakers.
That's wild. So those two films, even though they're done by completely different
That's a
people,
shared
are
universe.
Wow.
Also, fun fact, more fun just specific to me, it was shot in the Del Amo Mall, which is like my stomping grounds growing up. And
that must
so
be wild.
watching that film, and they've gone through several renovations, but like I remember when the mall like specifically looked like that. The food court though is fairly identical as far as it's like weird multi-level nonsense. Like it's a very impractically built thing where there's like stairs to get up to the food court, but only like 3 steps.
But so like when you see it in a movie, you're just immediately like, oh hey.
It's a very unique food
This
court.
is one of my like weird blind spots of a film that like I have no idea why I haven't seen it yet, because like I love everybody in it and I don't dislike Tarantino films.
Because it's just the least talked about of Tarantino's films, like next to maybe Death Proof.
Gotcha.
Like, and it came out like it came out after Pulp Fiction, and going up against Pulp Fiction is just like a very tough road.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it was likely panned by critics.
Oh, and I'm sure like there was nothing to do with the fact that the star was a middle-aged black woman.
Perhaps.
I'm just putting not necessarily like a conscious thing, but you know, that's just how it tends to go in Hollywood.
Yeah, and it
I know
also
that Tarantino has said in interviews that he's very proud of Jackie Brown, and he's kind of bummed about the fact that it's one of his more overlooked.
well, and it was
movies.
also a like homage to blaxploitation films,
Yeah.
which also could probably have been driving people away. Because if I'm not mistaken, the trailer is sort of also in that
That's the
vein.
impression that I got, and this very much was happening around the time that like the derogatory version of like what people call PC culture started to be some like a conversation of like people saying like we need to be more politically correct, and then also people like either like really internalizing that and almost being afraid to ever like touch on any
Well, there also
issues like
might
this.
have been some drama around it, considering that this one has not it. The N-word is said quite a bit.
Gotcha.
And the
And
central love story is an interracial romance.
And Tarantino is not one to shy away from using the N-word, which is a point of controversy for many.
Which we should probably not get into because we're all not black here.
We're all
Spoiler
quite
alert.
white.
Yeah.
But that's something that also could have been working against the film.
Yeah.
But I'm not one to be bringing up the newspaper headlines on that sort of stuff.
I wish I knew more about how it was received when it came out, because I know about how it sort of has faded from memory since then, but I don't know what the initial like critical reaction to it was.
I feel like if it was like universally beloved, we would have like known about it. So I feel like it was probably just overlooked, like you said.
Yeah.
I mean, as far as Rotten Tomatoes goes, it got an 87% according to critics, and 85% of audiences liked it.
But like that's like over its entire history when people have been able to like rediscover it. Like I'd be interested to know like what did Roger Ebert give it at the time, or you know, were Siskel and Ebert still together at that point?
In 97?
97, yeah.
Yeah.
I have not a clue.
Yeah, I'd be interested to see like what like some of the bigger film critics gave it like initially, because Ebert doesn't always necessarily give a bad review to a film just because it's not it's not going to be like commercially embraced either.
It also does sport a rather long runtime at 2 hours and 31 minutes.
Ooh, that is rough. Yeah,
So that
And it's
also
even for Tarantino, it's a very talky movie. Like it's even like less eventful than some of his other early stuff.
Well, it's a lot of people talking about how they're going to do things and just like planning rather than the action that I feel like we often get, like or like screaming at one another in a car that's moving.
My memory of it, it's been many years since I've seen it, but my memory of it is there's a lot of like people in living rooms talking to each other.
Yeah, there's like De Niro's character as like this sort of bumbling character is like just has a beach house and is chilling out with a girlfriend who then needs to do like a bags exchange with Jackie at some point, and then they like are just like wandering around in the mall for a little bit. Like,
I don't want to spoil the parking lot scene, but they have a really insane.
The parking lot scene is phenomenal. But yeah, and then just looking at its total domestic gross, it made $39 million at the domestic box office.
Oh wow, that's not too bad at all.
Its opening weekend was $9 million.
Yeah, that's like decent, especially for the time.
Yeah, and its budget was only $12 million. So like it made its money back.
Yeah, I think it just in sort of the canon of his films has kind of just become the one that it's the least Tarantino feeling of his movies.
Oh, okay.
Which might have something to do with it.
Mm-hmm. It feels, well, it's definitely leaning more on the romance.
Yes. And it feels like an Elmore Leonard story.
So in that regard, he nailed it.
Yeah.
I think it might be a Hufflepuff.
Oh, why?
Like, based on the fact that it is going for like a happier ending. Like, obviously, there is a fair amount of death that comes down on a few people.
And also in the regard that like you said, Jackie Brown is probably not most like Tarantino fans like it's not going to be the movie that they name as like the one that like hooked them or the one that they appreciate the most.
Yeah.
I imagine. And like Hufflepuffs tend to be the most like yeah, I guess. Nobody, I don't know a lot of people like who are really into Harry Potter enough to be like, this is what house I am, to be like, I'm a Hufflepuff.
I am.
Yeah, you are?
I'm
that's
a proud
rules.
Hufflepuff.
Hell yeah, dude.
But
But people who like go in blindly to take the test, Hufflepuff is the house that people are most likely to get like disappointed that they got sorted into.
What?
Yeah,
Bunch of dicks.
I feel like
the case.
that's Slytherin. I feel like
Slytherin, in my opinion, at least with our guests, people are surprised and
then
in
they
denial
suddenly
about it,
take
and then
ownership.
they get way too into it.
No, I lose it at anyone who is proudly like, I'm a Slytherin, because they're all the worst.
Okay, but do you agree that Jackie Brown's Hufflepuff? Or do you think that it might be a Gryffindor?
No, I'd say Hufflepuff.
I think Hufflepuff as well.
Because I don't think it's a Ravenclaw and I don't think it's a Slytherin. So I just was like,
It's very unassuming. It's just like,
yeah, which is in essence what a Hufflepuff sometimes is.
yeah.
Okay, so we have a really big gap because if we're just going by his directing credits, Jackie Brown was 97, and then it says his next film, and like forgive me if I'm like in the wrong section, was Kill Bill.
Yep.
Yes.
And that's 2003, so that's like 4 years shy of like what? Like that's a long time.
Yeah. I mean, he was making one long film, Kill Bill.
The process of Kill Bill took a while, but that still doesn't account for
Yeah, when
couple
did he
years.
start?
Well, it also might have been the situation where because Jackie Brown didn't do as well, like for the studio as they thought that it would, that he was kind of punished.
There's also a major stylistic change between Jackie Brown and Kill Bill. Kill Bill, like Reservoir Dogs through Jackie Brown feels very much like one phase of his career, and Kill Bill feels like a totally different thing. It's possible it was a harder sell.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I mean, I would argue like it is more than likely studios getting on board with a project and then him, because it's Tarantino. He's produced 2 great films and one that's like pretty good at turn profit. But then he starts describing it. And if you're saying, hey, I want to make a 2-part movie.
This is a 4-hour kung fu
Yeah,
pastiche.
no, like, okay, well, what's the main character's name?
The Bride.
Like
Pardon?
the
I
pitch.
like just the fact that he was like, oh yeah, no, the main character is not going to have a name that
The
you know.
pitch
We're going to
in and of
bleep her
itself.
name at first.
The pitch in and of itself is a hard sell, and like I'm sure studios were afraid of all of that. It's a female-driven action film that's a hard R.
And it's 4 hours long.
And it's 4 hours long. Those are all things that are going to make a studio, unless you're Harvey Weinstein, like be like, I don't know about that. And I think it. Correct me if I'm wrong. Like, was Weinstein always like his guy, or
I don't know if it was from the very beginning, but for a while, yeah. For a long time.
But okay, give us the single synopsis.
Okay. This is fun because Kill Bill was actually my favorite Quentin Tarantino movie.
Okay. That was the sentence.
Oh no. Kill Bill is about a woman named the Bride who was shot in the head, and she's trying to get revenge on Bill, who is her ex, who shot her in the head, and also his other cronies. And she goes on a series of very violent adventures that draw from kung fu and Western tropes.
And it's super fun.
I'll admit, I have also never seen this series. So, like, when you're like, it draws on kung fu elements, I'm like, bitch, she's holding a fucking sword. Like, it looks like a samurai sword. This looks like they just adapted like a film from like China or Japan.
I believe that the suit she wears, the like yellow the yellow tracksuit is like an iconic Bruce Lee thing.
Yeah.
And so that's a very definite, like, Kill Bill is where he really stepped the
Nods
homage up and all the nods in a very major way.
And you can tell that these are very these are homages that he wants you to realize and stuff. Okay.
Right. It feel like, in some ways, it feels like 4 hours of Tarantino recommending kung fu movies to you.
in very indirect but also direct ways. Like, you don't get the footnote being like, if you liked that, check this out.
Right, he just trusts you to like figure it out.
Yeah, or like
listen to the commentary track.
It's like what I think is the best motivation for a filmmaker is to make a film that they really wish existed.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The style on this one is definitely upped from his previous. As far
it's
as,
also
like,
way action heavier.
super much so.
So
That's
I feel
not
like
a phrase. Super much
super
so.
much so. I feel like this movie had to have been him also discovering what kind of director of action he is, because his first three weren't super action heavy, and this one has like fight scenes in it.
Yeah,
and number of
all the
kung fu
previous
sequences,
with the exception of Pulp Fiction briefly, it was all gun violence.
Yeah.
Whereas this, it is all types of different fighting throughout. A lot of more hand-to-hand and blade-based, and then
especially in part one.
Yes, which has that very fun like anime sequence with Lucy Liu that is gorgeous.
According to IMDb's trivia section, I recommend it if you've never heard of it. So apparently, like, they came up with the idea for this film because Tarantino was talking to Uma Thurman and was like, I want to do like a 70s era style kung fu film. And then apparently she came up with the idea of it like being a bride, like her in the wedding gown, like was her idea.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah, that's wild.
I mean, Uma Thurman was like not quite, but like kind of his muse for a little bit.
Yeah, no, for sure. It definitely like has the same sort of like resonance that you can see with like Woody Allen and Diane Keaton, where like her personality had a big influence on the piece that was created for her, essentially.
Which
She's
is interesting.
amazing in the Kill Bill movies.
Well, and she and he never dated, did they? Because I believe at the time he was seeing Sofia Coppola, because that was a thing.
That's wild.
Yeah,
No, I didn't know about
Tarantino
that.
and Sofia Coppola
No,
dated for a
I
spell.
usually know like hot goss for for a celebrity. Like I won't even have seen all of their films. But I think like that's like a much disputed like. Nah, they've never dated. He probably wanted to.
This is also a situation
Who
where
wouldn't want to date Uma Thurman? Are you
Right?
kidding me?
this is also a situation where going back to the foot fetish thing, it is like very apparent in Kill Bill because
Hell
they have
yeah.
right away with the toe wiggling scene.
they have like a tracking shot on somebody's feet in the tea house or something like that.
You know Tarantino jerked off his own film.
Yeah, probably specifically to Uma's toes.
Ew. All right, sorry. I'm not getting kink shame.
I'm of the mindset again that this is either a Ravenclaw or a Gryffindor.
Interesting. What's interesting is that part one and part two have very different feels from each other, but they also work really well as
We can
one
sort
movie.
them separately.
But I prefer them as one movie
All
and
right,
prefer
then.
watching them back to back. It's just that movie does have a major tonal shift halfway through. Into sort of a westerny feel.
Well, like taking that, so if we'll consider this one piece, like take that into consideration, like the major shift that happens. Usually, those sort of changes only happen to a Gryffindor or a Slytherin.
So my argument for Ravenclaw is this is using all of the knowledge that he has of so many film tropes and reapplying them into like a new modern framework, which is like it's essentially like an essay that you write and then he's citing all of his sources. Like the bibliography is this film.
But that's not with passion though.
That I will agree with you there.
Because I feel like the Ravenclaw route for that would be to do a documentary series about all of his films, but instead he was like,
he's remixing it.
I need to like basically give birth to like a new film in this vein that like pays homage to everything.
Sure.
I would say this is, but you know, he does it in what I feel is like a respectful way, and like it's very obvious. Like these are my influences, so I would say it's not a Slytherin. So that's why I say it's a Gryffindor.
I'll take Gryffindor. I mean, it also going in line with what you were saying, Zipper, of it being more of like, this is a shift in Tarantino as a director.
Yeah.
Which is like just a redirect that's turning the wheel, going, we're hitting the gas, we're going all in.
And Tarantino is such a wild director in terms that it's kind of hard to pin down like what his quintessential film would be. Like my gut would be to say Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction, but like this is like if any other director had made Kill Bill, this would probably you just like, oh yeah, that's the film that defines their career. But he continues to like keep putting out films that you'd be like, oh no, this okay. Well, now it's just even harder to pin down like what his film would be.
He keeps sort of shifting where his focus and like what makes him tick.
I think that Kill Bill defines his later stage, or at least it does for me. If Reservoir Dogs or Pulp Fiction defines his like earlier stuff, Kill Bill for me establishes a tone and sort of a formal precision that he has kind of stuck to. That's one of the reasons that I think Gryffindor is a good call for Kill Bill, because I think that Kill Bill is where that sort of perfectionism sort of shows the most, especially in like the action scenes and in the like super intense structuring of the movie into its 10 acts. I think that the formal precision of Kill Bill is very Gryffindor.
Cool. Now we're moving on into the Grindhouse films.
We're going to skip over the 2 episodes of CSI Crime Scene Investigation.
Yes, we are.
But he did an episode where one of the main characters got buried alive.
I love that you were like, we definitely discussed off mic, like, it's just the filmography, right? And we're like, well, we're going to bring this nonsense up.
Y'all didn't have me talking about this, so I can do whatever I want.
Sure. So the Grindhouse films, specifically Death Proof.
Yeah.
Which I
Who was the other dude on?
Robert Rodriguez, and he did Planet Terror, which I really liked, and Death Proof I did not enjoy.
Interesting. I'm the opposite.
All right, so tell it like do the one-liner about like what this film is about, like his segment anyway.
Cool. So Death Proof is basically a slasher film, but instead of a knife, the killer kills people with a car, and it's split into 2 halves where he goes after 2 different sets of women with his special murder car that was designed for stunts, because he's an evil stunt man.
Yes.
He's murdering women with his murder car?
With his murder car.
Well, definitely like this film was like made like as an homage to this like subgenre of like cult classic films, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay. And like they even presented it like they like really went out of the way to lean into like the old cult film like spectacle of like showing the films, right?
As far as the presentation was concerned, I remember seeing this in theaters. It had hokey like interstitials in between the 2 films that
Bits
were like
where the reels got lost.
Yeah, like really, it was a very fun experience.
What's interesting though is that the first half of it is very much into that like Grindhouse homage, and then the second half of the movie, all of the like scratchy footage and stuff goes away, and it looks much more modern. And that's the half of the movie about the group of women like turning the tables on the killer.
Oh, okay. So that was like, you know, like a metaphor for like, you know, the way that women have more agency now, or
I think it could be interpreted that way.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, it also sort of is paying homage to those like 70s films where it would have like the squad of like strong women who would just be like beating shit up and also looking great doing it.
Which, mind you, like that, like the idea of like the strong woman who's just like very violent in a way that's almost like sexually aggressive is like it's kind of like a hot topic issue right now of like the whole like Joss Whedon is Buffy feminism like good feminism, and I think it's really worth exploring also in Tarantino's films.
Or the discussion that was recently had with James Cameron criticizing Wonder Woman as a step back from Sarah Connor, which like
first of all,
we've already established that like none of us here are the biggest James Cameron fans. Like we might enjoy his movies, but like as a person,
oh no, I love the Terminator films and like Titanic rules.
But whenever he's just citing his own
I don't like him
shit,
as a person. He's a dumbass.
Yeah.
I don't mean to take it back to the foot fetish thing, but something interesting about Death Proof is that Tarantino gives his foot fetish to the movie's villain.
Of course he does.
Also, there's a shot where like a foot is just dismembered.
The movie, there's a foot that comes off.
It opens on a foot, like up on the dashboard, of the car.
It opens on Sidney Poitier's feet.
Yes.
The other Sidney Poitier.
Oh wait, I thought it
Sidney
was there.
Poitier's daughter is also named Sidney Poitier.
Oh,
Wait,
wow.
really?
Yeah.
That
It works.
is all right. That's confusing.
No, but, like,
so
yeah.
then technically she's a junior?
Ugh.
Or is it spelled differently?
Yeah. It's spelled differently.
But-
I think with like a Y versus an I.
No, but I think there is something to consider and like critique about the way that sometimes men write for women when they want to write a feminist character. It can sometimes be just as two-dimensional as like the bimbo characters, if ultimately it's the character still serves to be like something that's sexually gratifying for the male viewer.
Mm-hmm.
That's my social justice warrior stupid rant for the day. But I think even more, in my opinion, and, you know, Buffy and James Cameron fans can come at me for it. Like, I think like Tarantino at least is doing it the least consciously. I feel like he probably wants to like give dignity and agency to his characters. It's like,
I think it seems that way.
Yeah.
I don't think he's got, and like, I think many of the characters written could go to any gender and like it would still feel like a strong character.
for
Like,
sure.
Like,
Whereas,
Part
like-
of the second half of Death Proof, when the killer, he messes with a group of stunt drivers and stunt women.
Yeah.
And one of them was a stunt woman that he had worked with that he was just like
Zoe Bell,
Zoe
right?
Bell, of just like, I gotta write a movie for you.
she's Uma Thurman's stunt person.
From
Oh,
Kill Bill.
wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, but like my major point is like Buffy definitely like has a lot of great feminist things in it, but like your point, you couldn't take the Buffy character and have the same conceit of the show of, nobody's taking this vampire slayer seriously because he's too attractive.
Mhm.
Like that would never be a show that would live like, what? Of course he's gonna be attractive, like he's gonna be conventionally attractive, but like that would not be the pilot pitch that you could give to a studio. Whereas like you said with Tarantino's like women, you could potentially like gender swap them and it wouldn't make as much of a difference. And I
Right.
think that's usually a better like rule of thumb. It's like if you put this character into a male body and they were a man, would it work?
And it's like this killer goes after these women because they're women, and then no, they're stunt drivers.
Yeah.
And they
And
like
they fuck
fuck him up.
Like I think my issue with the movie is if I saw the film in isolation, I would enjoy it more. But coming off of Planet Terror, which was so like explosion heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and then you land in Death Proof, and you like
It's a slow burn.
it's
Planet
a
Terror.
very slow.
Do you think
burn.
they should have switched the
I
order?
think they should have.
And do you think they
personally.
didn't because like Tarantino like was a bigger name at the time?
I mean, he definitely was.
Not
Oh,
necessarily
well,
with film nerds. I'm talking about like with a wider audience. Do you think like he got the
I don't know.
the headliner billing because of that?
That's interesting because Rodriguez had just come off of Sin City,
Yeah.
like before Grindhouse, and Sin City was well received by many.
Oh, for sure. But I
So-
wouldn't like. But like, was he more of a household name at that point? than
Tarantino, I think, definitely was.
Yeah.
You have to wonder if they like sat down together and like decided the order. I don't know. I kind of like, I mean, for me, the order worked because I ended up loving Death Proof.
Yeah.
But also because Planet Terror to me felt like kind of a parody of Grindhouse films, whereas Death Proof felt like a very like earnest, like trying to recreate a Grindhouse movie.
Gotcha. So you think that Rodriguez maybe had a better like handle of like how much should we like be winking and how much should
Maybe
be earnest? Yeah.
his was way more ironic.
Gotcha.
Oh,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah.
So where does this one land for you guys? Because I haven't seen this.
It's a crazy car chase movie with a super cool car chase in it.
Mm-hmm.
But
Takes itself maybe too seriously, like as you said.
I don't know if I would say it takes itself too seriously. I appreciate its efforts to recreate what it's paying homage to, but I think it has fun doing so.
I think it's a Slytherin.
Interesting. You think it's like kind of mean-spirited?
No. Not that it's mean-spirited, but it's a very calculated sort of deconstruction of like those types of films, and it sets up some expectations that it then subverts with the like
That's
strong
true.
female like characters.
The second half of the movie is a pretty big like gotcha.
and then becomes like both sides go on a tear, singling out the other for a very specific reason, which is not an unlikely thing for a Slytherin to do, to be like so laser focused on one thing.
Yeah. That's true. Death Proof, as much as I love it, is like a little smug sometimes.
Yeah.
In a kind of Slytherin-y way. Have you noticed that I just attribute all negative character traits to Slytherins?
Many do. We try to break that mold. I mean,
Yeah,
when Reed and
shouldn't.
I first started that, like there was some hard language.
I was leaning very hard on it because like I don't know much about Harry Potter.
Okay.
I haven't really read most of the books or seen most of the movies, so I was playing into stereotypes that I shouldn't have been, and I'm very sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. We forgive you.
So we're gonna say, are you comfortable saying Slytherin?
I can call it a Slytherin, yeah.
Okay, cool.
Argued my point. Inglorious bastards. Let's get into this fucking Nazi killing fun spree.
This like agitprop film. Because this film's all about killing Nazis.
Yeah, give us that single syllable. I mean,
Yeah, Inglourious Bastards is about Brad Pitt killing Nazis.
Like and like not just, but it's specifically a group of like Jewish people,
Yeah.
like going up and
it's
and
an
killing
alternate
Nazis, right?
history.
And then also a Jewish woman who escaped to France
To kill
planning her
Hitler.
vengeance on Hitler and all of the top-ranking Nazis.
Yes.
Yeah, and like literally, like, doesn't it end with like her trapping the Nazis in a theater and like burning them to
In a
death?
movie theater and setting it on
Spoilers,
fire.
yes.
Or, yeah.
Also, that's where Samuel L. Jackson gets his cameo in Inglourious Bastards, because he tells you about silver nitrate and how it's incredibly
Yes.
inflammable.
Like 3 lines of voiceover
Yeah.
over the course of
He
the film.
just is explaining how silver nitrate film will catch fire like nobody's business, and that's the film that they're projecting. And the whole, like, it's
He
actually,
also explains the character of Hugo Stiglitz, where someone mentions the character, and then for the first time, you don't know Sam Jackson's in this movie, and then his voice just goes, everyone in the German army knew who Hugo Stiglitz was. It's like, oh, thanks, Sam Jackson. for
it's a very
letting
He was
me
like,
know.
Tarantino went to Sam Jackson was like, yo, dude, I got some loose ends I need to tighten up
Right.
with this
Will
film.
you be
Like,
my
I got some-
exposition?
Yeah, like it's literally the trope of like voiceover only being used to help the audience understand what's going on.
yeah, it was like
That
probably a
rules.
thing where they were like, oh, we could probably do this with title cards, and then it was like, no, we need to freeze this thing.
Because it works really well as like a joke. Like,
Yeah.
it's super funny when Sam Jackson's voice comes in, because you're like, come on.
Now, my criticism of this film is that I don't think that these Nazi hunters were really taking the time to hear out the other side. I feel like there was violence on all sides.
on
and
both
I
sides.
don't like the fact that this is romanticizing Antifa. You know? It really is showing Antifa in a light that is very like, it shows them as the heroes of the film. And I feel like we need to show and represent Nazis as fairly as the people who fought them.
What's interesting on that point is that I actually think the movie does a good job of showing the Nazis as human beings, and then also being like, but that doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Christoph
No, which I
Waltz-
think is the exact way that you need, like, we need to today handle Nazis, is to be like, I realize you're a human, but you're a human who's calling for the ethnic cleansing of the world
Which-
for your bloodline, and we're gonna shut that conversation down. We're not gonna
Right.
like
Which is
dignify
why
it.
Christoph Waltz being cast as Hans Landa was like the like best casting.
Arguably like the sweetest seeming man in the universe. Like a perfect
Right.
fit to
Like,
cast as a Nazi.
And then there are 2 Nazi characters in the movie that the movie makes you feel sympathy for, and then brutally murders. Of like, where it's just like, oh, that Nazi might not be so. Oh, right, okay, good. They still need to get their head bashed in by a
Right.
baseball bat.
I just love that this is a film that, like, if you put it down on paper, there would be political centrists who are like, oh man, but like these people are super violent. They're not
They
having
want
a
their
dialogue.
scalps. They're just taking scalps.
I love this film.
I do too.
I love this film. It's such a bizarre, violent romp. Like
Yeah. It's ultra violent. Yeah.
Like, it's ultra violent to the point of parody, and it obviously is like serious subject matter, but at the same time, it's like not taking itself that seriously.
For sure. It's like it's weird.
But
What
then,
if Hitler explodes?
right? That opening scene is like hands down such a solid way to bring you in and be like, oh fuck, and then the follow up is like, all right, boys, let's kill all these motherfuckers. Like that's, and then it's just a rip roaring time.
It's the movie that made me like really aware of how much I love his like structure as a writer, because it's in 5 acts. It's not like, it doesn't follow like a typical 3-act structure at all. Most of those 5 acts are each one like really long scene.
Yeah.
And the first 3 kind of feel like the first act of 3 separate movies.
Mm-hmm.
Like he spends a long time setting things up before he lets them collide at the very end.
And then there's also, I mean, I love the Michael Fassbender scene.
Oh yeah, which was supposed to be Simon Pegg, which would have been real weird.
What?
Yeah, he was originally cast in that role.
Oh my,
Adam
don't think I
Sandler
could-
was originally cast in this movie too.
As Donnie, right, with the baseball bat.
Like who was the guy who played that character?
Eli Roth.
Yeah, he had the Adam
Oh,
Sandler was supposed to be
gosh.
the Eli Roth character.
I mean,
Yeah.
Adam Sandler, when he puts on his dramatic hat, like,
Can be good.
is pretty damn solid. It's also super weird when like Mike Myers shows up in the film. And you're like, wait.
For one scene.
Yeah, for that one scene where he's just like, all right, boys, here's the general rundown. And you're like, what is
I think because like
happening?
many comedians are not built to do anything else, there is a real like stigma against like comedic actors doing dramatic roles. It's why a lot of people are always like,
They're always so good at it, though.
not always.
That's
You remember the ones who are good
That's
because they
true.
stand out so much, but like how many fucking stand-ups do they give shows to that they cannot fucking act?
true.
Yeah, like
Right,
stand-ups more
But I
than
feel like comedic actors end up being good at drama more than the other way around. Don't you
or
think?
like they just get a comedic role that makes them famous and like because like Robin Williams was a Juilliard trained dramatic actor. He went to school with Christopher Reeves, but when you see him in these dramatic roles, you're like, oh man, it's like the Miss Doubtfire can make me cry.
But
You
like,
know?
yeah, I mean, we've got a lot of people who are very known for their comedic roles who, when they take that dramatic turn, like I love Jim Carrey when he's dramatic. I love, like, I mean, Bob Odenkirk now is just
Bob
like,
Odenkirk is just like he's just a fucking great ass actor.
Yeah.
but like, if you had told like everybody watching Mr. Show, like, oh, he's going to be nominated for an Emmy, and they're like, oh, for like Mr. Show or like any of the, and
like,
it's like,
no.
oh no, it's for like,
Wait, what's the Jim Carrey dramatic turn that you like?
I mean, I think like he's got,
I think he's good in
the,
Eternal Sunshine.
the Majestic.
Oh, I forgot. I forgot about Eternal Sunshine.
Man on the Moon.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess so. But like that one was like a
the
weird film
number
itself.
23.
That's the film that I remembered.
the
I was like,
funny-
wait,
I
what,
thought
what
about
film
that,
did
too.
he do that didn't have like a comedic, like at least like slant to it? And I was just thinking of the number 23, which I actually recommend to people. If you've not, if you want to see, if you want to get high and watch a bonkers ass film that makes no sense, but it's like still really engaging.
And you'll start seeing the number
It's-
23 everywhere,
It's
guys.
Yeah.
a terrible film, and I can't recommend it enough.
Great.
Do you think Inglourious Bastards is a Slytherin?
That ending shot of like where he literally has a character in the movie declare the movie to be his masterpiece is pretty Slytherin-y, right?
And I don't know. There's just something like not necessarily like in a bad way. There's something really great about being able to have a film where the Jewish people like are not like the victims
Well, it's
necessarily
Where
of
they're
the
like
film.
reclaiming
Yeah.
World War II.
anytime you're doing an alternate history
Yeah,
thing,
it's
I
revisionist.
feel like you're inherently being clever and crafty. On that note, I would just like to take a slight sidebar to say that the book, The Man in the High Castle, is a great premise with terrible execution of everything that they potentially set up. For
Oh,
those of
really?
you unfamiliar, have you read the book, Zipper? So the basic premise of The Man in the High Castle is, oh, what if the Axis of Evil or the Axis powers like won the war? So
Oh, they made a TV show
yeah,
about
they
this,
made
right?
a TV show on Amazon, and so America is split up into the West and the East. The East is controlled by Germany, and the West is controlled by Japan. They split it down the center.
Oh.
And so, like, on the east side of America that has like the same ethnic cleansing going on. And on the West side, Japanese culture is like strangely infatuated with American like iconography and things like that, as opposed to dealing with like the weird class structure or like making it like, oh, this is kind of like the Berlin Wall, but it's in America and it's got a capitalist system still in place and everything like that. They're like, no, what if we followed like the jeweler trade about how people were making inauthentic American like trinkets?
That's
like,
so bizarre,
Like
dude.
that's one thing. And then also in there is a also on the Japanese side, and we're predominantly following characters on the Japanese side of things, but there are Germans that are coming in and having meetings with the Japanese officials, and that's like all weird, and there are some spies. Like it's kind of fun, and the Germans and the Japanese don't trust one another.
I'm really enjoying that you just like had a screed about Man in the High Castle
yeah.
ready to go.
Here is it only hit me like when I was like
love this.
revisionist. But here is the part that bugs the crap out of me. So in this book, there is a book about if the Allies had won the war. And it's blasphemous.
It's like a look into like our timeline.
And everyone is like, oh, that book is taboo, but the book is still, and so the man in the high castle is like the author of this book, and one of the jeweler's ex-girlfriend like goes to try and find the author to warn him that people are trying to kill him, but the book has already been published. Like, it just is, it's such a like self-congratulatory, masturbatory, like, look at what I did. I made this excellent concept, and then I praise how the excellent concept is controversial, and then choose to pick boring shit to...
Yeah. No, and like... Yeah, like how much of a wild stretch of the imagination to imagine that America became a proto-fascist government.
Right.
Moving on.
I would be curious to see the timeline of Inglourious Bastards in modern day, where a bunch of Jews blew up Hitler.
Yeah.
And that's how World War II ended. Like, I'm stoked to hear what that modern day timeline is like.
Anyway, I just had to get that
No, thank
out of my
you.
mind.
I didn't know much
in
about
pop
that show.
culture of that timeline, Jews aren't thought of as like the nebbishy Woody Allen types. It's like, oh, they're badass. They blew up Hitler at the end of World War II.
Yeah.
I don't know, guys. Like all of these like thought experiment type like what if the bad guys, like what if the brutality of humanity wins out? Like I just don't ever care.
So are you still in the Slytherin camp on this?
But that's the opposite of what Inglourious is, right? Because that's what if the good guys
this one's a little bit different to me. I mean, like, I don't like it. Like, what if the South won the Civil War?
Right.
Like, I'm not super stoked about. Like, I'm gonna wait and see sort of thing. But like, and what
With
if
Confederate
what
on
if
HBO.
the Axis of Evil won the? I was like. So
let's sort Man in the High Castle.
What if a bunch of more people died and suffered?
Yeah.
Yeah, like I'm just like, I'm not super interested in that.
That's fair.
I don't, because I never really see like what the point of it is, other than to say, man, isn't that bad? Isn't slavery not good? And we're gonna show it by like having a TV show where they're gonna definitely be slave owners who are still raping their female slaves, like. Yeah, I'm just like...
On that note, so we've said that this is a Slytherin. Inglourious Bastards is a Slytherin.
I mean, that's in my opinion.
Yeah.
It's fine.
No, it can be.
But it's like a fun, good Slytherin.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Part of me loves how like Hufflepuffy that ending is of like, what if everything just worked out? Like, what if Hitler just exploded and it all worked out and we were all Hufflepuffs and we were all friends? Like,
And we all went to the movies.
yeah.
We don't need to officially settle on it. It's a Hufflepuff or a Slytherin. Go fuck yourself. So Django Unchained, which is keeping and going off of your, what if the slave like rebelled and killed everybody?
I know. I don't dislike revisionist stuff when the underdogs get the upper hand.
Right.
I just like I don't like revisionist shit where they're like, what if it was worse? What if the oppressors oppressed more?
Yeah.
They do every day.
Keep on
Django
pressing.
Unchained is a Western about a slave who kills a lot of people in a quest to get his wife back.
Yes.
And he teams up with a German bounty hunter.
Yep. Also, Christoph Waltz.
Yep.
Now playing a good guy. Jamie Foxx plays Django, the titular character, and Leonardo DiCaprio should have won the Oscar.
Django Unchained is actually the movie that convinced me that when it comes to racial issues, Tarantino is a lot more sensitive than people give him credit for, because the way that he handles the violence in the movie is all of the like gunfight violence is super cartoony and like over the top and like sprouts of blood, and all of the like slavery related violence he like gives a ton of weight to.
It's always grounded and like, you know, like I'm a little like a mixed opinion, because I do want to listen to people of color who like have some sort of like criticism of him, like saying like, at what point is this like him appropriating and like just being like, I just want to be able to like say these words, but I can't say it, so I'm gonna have a black person say it.
Right. And like obviously you've got characters that are like Samuel L. Jackson's character, who is very much like,
who's basically the villain of the film.
Who's a villain of the film and like essentially a white person in a black person's body, like as far as his ideology is concerned, because he's been so inundated with
I don't even necessarily think that is, I mean, and like this is me trying to stay in my lane as much as possible. I think there is like discussion to say
driving out.
There's like discussion about like, you know, the dynamics of different treatment for different folks depending on like what their utility was during the time. Yeah.
Right.
But this film is also especially like very much like in the vein of Tarantino, like doing the homage. Like this one very much feels like a blaxploitation film, especially of like, you know, all of the great westerns of that era.
Of him just taking two genres that he loves and being like, here are a bunch of my favorite movies that I'm going to recommend to you again.
The thing that's also very interesting about this film, if I'm remembering correctly, this came out the same year or a year after 12 Years a Slave?
It was either the year before or the year after. Okay.
But I feel like this gave strangely a more comprehensive look at the mistreatment of slaves. Like I was
then 12 Years a Slave.
I was unaware. Like I was aware of
12
a
Years a
lot.
Slave is very much about one person's experience.
I suppose
specifically.
so. I was unaware of a lot of the like more granular components of like the fighting that they would have slaves do with one another, like that scene that they come in on Leonardo DiCaprio in, like, which is just brutal. It's cockfight, like it's cockfighting. Like they've dehumanized them to that point. Like,
I think like the way that they represented like Leonardo DiCaprio like is probably like a good step in the direction of just being like, at this time America just was not operating on the same level of humanity as everyone else.
And that's what I think was like such a it sounds weird, like such a positive step for like really demonizing how bad like some of these things can be.
I had someone tell me once, I'm curious how both of you feel about this, because like the movie, you could accuse it of wanting to have its cake and eat it too, as far as like being a fun Western romp and like trying to say things about slavery.
Yeah.
I did have someone tell me once, like, it's a cartoon movie. It's a action movie. It hasn't earned the right to like make a statement, which I think is kind of silly. I think that a movie can be fun.
I would say like a more like a better criticism would be like, is that the sort of thing that like a white filmmaker should be helming?
Sure.
Like that's like, because I'm like, if we're gonna really get into like, you know, like the processes and like repercussions and issues, like it probably should be a black person who would like have these sort like be in charge from every point of view.
But I would make the argument like the condition of slavery, while historically speaking has unfortunately almost exclusively been of like black people being enslaved, the concept itself of slavery should be able to be explored by anybody.
Oh no, I specifically mean
like American
slavery. American slavery.
Oh, okay, yes, I understand.
Not slavery in general, but like what we're still dealing with.
You're touching on like historical actual happenings.
Yeah.
But I also, I mean, when I approached Django Unchained, I do feel that like it's got a component of like revisionist history to it a little bit.
For sure. Yeah.
And so I'm not going to be taking it completely at face value, but I'm going to be recognizing like, okay, if we strip away the more lavish moments.
Although I will say it's not as revisionist as you think, because did you know that Harriet Tubman, she's like celebrated as like, running the Underground Railroad.
Yeah.
Did you know that if a slave like was like, I'm not going with you, or even seemed like they were going to go back, she would kill them?
Oh shit.
She was a fucking badass. Like she, like everyone like always depicted her, especially when you're a child, as like just being like this loving, nurturing person. But no, she was getting shit done. She's like, by any means necessary, I'm gonna free as many slaves as I can. And so like in that sort of like, fuck it, I'm just going balls to the wall, I feel like that is like definitely like maybe an even more truthful representation. But like I said, it's hard when you're not somebody of color.
Have we had like a Harriet Tubman biopic?
No, I don't know. I don't think so.
I feel like is right there, and like any number of very competent Black directors could be taking that and really making it great.
Barry Jenkins, who did Moonlight, is doing an Underground Railroad series for Amazon.
Oh, really?
Based on Colson Whitehead's novel, the premise of which is, what if there was an actual train? It's about the Underground Railroad, but there's also actual trains.
And obviously, like, it's like it could be apocryphal, or like maybe she even only just threatened slaves to do it. I don't know if she ever actually killed anybody, but like I said, she was more of a badass than we even give her credit
That's one of those. That's one of the, like, if she is just a like mass murderer, that's
she's not. I don't think she was killing a ton of people, and I don't think there were many slaves who were like, I would prefer this.
Well, I'm saying in the scenario we're going like Abraham Lincoln vampire hunter sort of status. Like there's that movie that could potentially exist, but obviously,
if there is a Harriet Tubman thing that's like more action based, it's schlocky as hell. I can guarantee it.
But I think probably, at least, I mean, this is speaking purely from speculation and only having received this information moments ago. It more than likely is you have to cover your fucking like ass. And so if anybody knows, here's the in point, and they are getting cold feet, they are now like, you can't have that information. You can't have that information getting back to a slave owner. You have you just unfortunately have to kill somebody in order to
keep the secret.
Yeah, which is like, ugh.
No, and that's why I just like, I think it rules to have a film, if nothing else, like showing the conditions of slavery, where like somebody like took complete control, had complete faculties, and that way is like a lot more humanizing than some depictions of slavery have been. You know, I can only like. I don't know. My only critique of like the Handmaid's Tale, for instance, is like it
not
feels,
spoilers, right?
It just like very much is like,
I haven't seen it yet.
It's very much like completely downtrodden.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's just like no hope, and in that way, I kind of feel like it dehumanizes some of the female characters a little bit.
Gotcha.
And in and of itself, but it's still far and away. It's still like it's still a fantastic piece of science fiction. I highly recommend it, especially the book even more than the TV show. I think that the book has more realistic depiction of what would actually happen in this case.
Mm-hmm.
The show, by virtue of being a show, it feels like it has to also be like a little more of like, this is a science fiction show with like an arc that we're following.
Oh, well, like, and this might end up being not true, but in the books, they were racially segregated when this thing happens. Like, there's no black people like in the Handmaids. They were considered, like realistically in our white ethno state that we live in, they were considered not good enough stock, even if they could get like, because it's like the Handmaids, like these women are the last people on earth who can have children. And so black people were completely cut out of that. You never hear a trace about anybody being transgender, which is also true on the TV show, which is terrifying. But I think Django had a lot really working for it, and then some stuff that I feel like is maybe more of a gray area. But like that's That's the beauty of his work.
Yeah.
it's
It's always interesting to me to hear interviews with like Samuel L. Jackson about Tarantino stuff.
Yeah.
And about how much
Because they've had like decades-long relationship at this point.
right.
Well, it's all. Oh, sorry. Continue.
No, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, I was just saying, like, it obviously stands. Well, Tarantino's work in general is obviously effective in starting conversations because we've just been going on and on all of these topics, which is an indicative of like a piece that isn't so one-sided or so clearly missing the mark.
No, I think what Tarantino does, and he doesn't always do it successfully necessarily, is that he tries to thoughtfully be transgressive. Yeah.
Mhm.
I think he definitely tries to push it, and sometimes he crosses the line like any filmmaker who does that will. But I think more so than other people, he at least is trying to give like minority characters who like actors who wouldn't necessarily usually get meaty roles or like fully fleshed out characters. Like he tries more than some, especially action directors do.
Mm-hmm. What do you think Django is?
Gryffindor?
Because it is so earnestly trying to tackle those subjects.
It's uplifting. It's like fearless. Like, the entire thing. It's like, it's a little bit like, if I would say, if anything, like Leonardo DiCaprio, like turned that character out, but he still seems like a super villain. So it feels a little bit more like very one sharp point of view. And I think that like tends to lend itself more to like a Gryffindor sort of vein. And
it feels like it has that whole fairy tale angle to it as well, of like echoing the German fairy tale that King tells partway through, and having this very like typical like happy ending of just like the character coming through the fire to like achieve. Yeah.
Like this is the hero's journey if you have anything. Yeah. So yeah. And if you're a hero, you're probably not a Hufflepuff.
And now we are.
Come on.
And now we're sticking with Westerns with The Hateful Eight as our final film to sort.
I haven't seen this one either. Oh, what's the pitch?
Oh, okay. So a bunch of assholes get stuck in a room together.
Yeah, that's it. It's
I really like Hateful Eight.
I enjoyed it all but Samuel L. Jackson's like, I'm going to get Bruce Dern to shoot monologue that runs like, for me, just too long.
Oh, I loved its positioning right before the intermission.
Oh, no. I thought that was great. I just thought the monologue was like 4 minutes too long or something.
Interestingly, Hateful Eight, sorry, I feel like I've started too many sentences that way of like, interestingly, I hope it doesn't seem condescending and annoying.
Actually.
But I do find it super interesting that Hateful Eight started as a Django novel that Tarantino was writing called Django in White Hell.
Oh, really?
And then he realized that it didn't work if there was a purely sympathetic character. So he replaced that character with Sam Jackson's character, who's also kind of an asshole. So it was just 8 dicks stuck in a room together.
Oh, so this is like, are these like all anti-heroes? Like you can relate to all of them? Or are there ones that you clearly like?
There's a couple that are more specifically like, these are the point of view, like you relate to them
more.
So
the more boiled down or more specific premise is that
you didn't think my one sentence synopsis was specific enough?
Jennifer Jason Leigh is a wanted part of a gang.
Yeah.
She's been captured, and the bounty on her head, like a snowstorm, it's Samuel L. Jackson who catches her, right?
Kurt Russell.
And then
he finds Samuel L. Jackson and like starts traveling with him.
And there's a snowstorm coming. They all wind up at this haberdashery.
And none of the people that were supposed to be there are there, and there's a bunch of strangers instead. And so the question is, who here is a criminal trying to like bust her out?
And then the snowstorm locks them in, so it's a bottle episode of a movie.
Oh, wow.
And it ends with most of them dying.
A lot of people shoot each other.
Spoiler alert.
Yeah.
Is there anything like is there any like thematic or like departure from like his other films? Like what sets this one apart from his other stuff?
It's interesting because this one, like Django, it's hyper violence.
This one feels less hopeful to me. less hopeful and a little more mean-spirited and a little more like people suck.
Yeah.
And there's not necessarily anything we can do about that.
Gotcha.
Right. But then it also has sort of throwbacks in, while it does have like chapter breaks like a lot of Tarantino films do. This one, like Pulp Fiction or Reservoir Dogs, does have a like clipping back further in time that the previous films or the like latter films hadn't done.
So this is also a non-linear film.
Like only for a moment.
Oh, okay.
Like there's one component that you don't know until about 3/4 of the way
And then
through.
they're like, oh, here's the reveal.
It's like, let me show you.
Okay.
Yeah, you get that, and then you suddenly go back into that scene, and you're like, oh, fuck.
Yeah. I think it's a very topical movie in the sense that it puts its main theme right in the title of it's about hate and the reasons that people hate each other. And it's post-Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And so race does end up factoring in with Sam Jackson's character. But it's sort of just trying to be like, all these people hate each other for different reasons, and none of it is fucking productive.
Right.
Oh,
it's
gotcha.
it's a cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay. So like none of the violence is like justifiable.
No, it's all
in the
pointless
end.
and meaningless and dumb and shitty.
Strangely, though, it does end with one character learning a lesson.
That's true.
One character does walk out of that being like, I have a fairer understanding and basic respect for this individual.
Now, do you think that we more easily accept violence in films if we think it's justified?
Probably.
I think so.
Yeah.
I think culturally, like, righteous violence is a really interesting thing, and like
Yeah.
that. With this movie, I mean, because what does justified necessarily mean, when it comes
Of
to
course,
violence?
yeah.
Because everyone's going to draw the line of justification in a different place.
Mm-hmm.
So are you asking, do we think if it feels justified within the context of the film, or like
Not even
justified
like
to the morality of
justified,
the
or
viewer?
like sometimes it feels like more satisfying and stuff like
Yeah.
that. Like we connect to it a lot easier if we're like, I understand why this is happening.
Or if we
Right.
feel like the character deserves it.
Yeah, which tends to happen in other action films because they just
Yeah.
really paint in broad strokes.
Right. Well, in this circumstance, you have all deplorable people in a room. So everybody is deserving of a bullet or an untimely end in some fashion or another, but they're also presented in a way that you do feel some degree of sympathy for at least a handful of characters
Okay.
at points.
There is an act of violence towards the end, though, that I feel like the movie really wants you to ask yourself how you feel about it.
Yes, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And, like we're speaking. We've
I don't wanna,
spoken
like,
in spoilers
spoil
for
it.
some components, but not
We
for
spoiled
others.
all the other movies. You mean for me?
That's
Are you
true.
trying to spare me?
No, we actually haven't spoiled everything in some cases.
Yeah. I don't know.
We're not going to spoil it for you,
Okay,
Reed.
cool.
It's worth seeing.
Well, then where do you guys think this one lands?
Well, it's worth noting there are two different cuts of this film,
Oh, I did not
It's true.
know that.
and this is the only
The
Tarantino
3-hour
film that operates like that. 'Cause-
Yeah, there's the 3-hour 70mm cut with an intermission.
which I saw.
Same.
3 hours.
Yes.
Yeah.
Damn.
Mhm.
And for that version, he also gives you an overture at the beginning,
Which
and then
is
a
very
10-minute
nice.
intermission in the middle. And you were given a program if you went to see that version.
Yeah.
Which I think is super cool.
He's such
Right.
a nerd.
Yeah.
When I saw Hateful Eight, I saw it on Christmas Day, and as I was leaving the Del Amo Mall, call back to Jackie Brown, saw it with my family, I passed by Tarantino.
What?
Yeah.
Wow.
And had a moment, and it was a very weird moment where I looked at him and was like, hey, is that? And he turned and just gave me a nod.
Just
and I was like, oh. So it was pretty exciting.
That
And-
was worth it just to see your reenactment. He got excited. You could see he got very happy just talking about it.
I'm he's one of those directors that I respect the hell out of for really.
Yeah, well, one time I got glared at by Danny Bonaducci at a farmer's market, so whatever.
I can actually tell this one now. You had wanted to bring this up before we jumped on the pod.
Hell yeah! Last night I called Michael Barryte because I had to like move a couple things around in our schedule, and he was like, "I'm on a date at the movies," and then later he was sending me selfies of himself, and suddenly he was just like, "William H. Macy is at this theater," and like sent me a picture, a creeper shot. Like the kind that like a dude would send take of a girl like over his shoulder of William H. Macy.
Well, okay, it is worth noting when this was also happening because you failed to disclose this. So I was on a first date and she was like, "We should get drinks," and I said yes. I am a lightweight, and so I got drunk.
I was trying to save your dignity
No.
here.
I understand. I'm more than willing to let's air this all
You
out.
ended
Let's
up
talk
going
about
home
Michael's
with William
drinking
H.
problem.
Macy.
No, because that fact is necessary for the next bit of interaction. So I have half of this drink, get drunk off of half of my drink, very foolishly finish it.
Did you fuck William H. Macy, Michael?
No. But then the person who I'm on the date with is like, "I'm gonna go." So I was like,
After, when you were, so he was stuck at the mall
so
by
I was
himself.
stuck at the mall by myself, just trying to sober up. So I go to the bar that is at this theater in the Grove. They
I
now
don't know
have
if
a
this
bar.
is the case outside of Los Angeles or bigger cities, but recently, like a lot of movie theaters have started to install full bars. So,
Yes.
yeah, you're
So anyway,
at the bar at the
so I
movie
go to the bar
theater.
at the movie theater and like, I would like to be responsible and I would like water, please. So I'm getting water and I'm just like seated and drinking at like one of the tables right there. And then William H. Macy walks out. As I'm a little bit drunk, I want to verify this, which is why I took the photo, but I'm sure as shit not gonna like walk up to him. So I'm like keeping my distance and sipping and then snap the photo. And so like if you scale it, you're like, yeah, that's definitely William H. Macy,
Yeah.
like rocking a mustache and like
he
slightly long
was
hair.
he was a respectful distance away.
But then what ended up happening was then he moved to the bar, like right across from me, at which point I was like, 100%, I know that this is him. I'm still drunk and I'm like, I need to sober up because it's been like an hour that I've just been like pounding water. And so I then am like, I need to get more water. The only opening is right next to William H. Macy at the bar. So I then walk to William H. Macy's left, ask the bartender, I'm like, "Oh, excuse me," to William H. Macy. And then I'm like, "If I could get more water, please." And he's like, and William H. Macy's like, oh. Like he just like kind of made like some noise that like made me turn to him. And I was like, "Oh, I'm just trying to be responsible." To which he was like, "I'm not." And then I just like,
Hell yeah.
and then I looked him in the eyes for a moment and then walked away.
During that one moment, did he take an entire line of Coke?
It was like it was a fun little moment that I I didn't want to interact with him.
Come on. You knew that you were going to have a fun moment with William H. Macy when you went to get
I wasn't expecting him to
water.
respond. Like it was just one of those things you do when you're like, I'm going to try to be moderately clever.
And if
then,
I didn't suspect that both of you were straight, I'd be like, "Damn, William H. Macy hit on you."
Just going for it.
Yeah.
No, he was talking to somebody at the bar the whole time. Like
Oh.
he invited like his posse of people to like come get drinks and they were
Now,
like, "No, we're fine."
Hypothetically,
Mm-hmm.
if you knew that William H. Macy was flirting with you, how much would you be like, "I'm going to see where this goes"? As far as I can tell, Michael is a straight man.
Yes. In my slightly drunken state, I would probably be like, let's see where this goes.
You'd flirt back a little bit with William H. Macy?
In my sober state, I'd be like, well, I don't know. I'd be so overthinking it, like I would just take myself out.
Like he could be like, "You want to go back to my place?" And you'd be thinking, "I don't want him to think that I'm being gay at him. I gotta get out of here."
No,
I would make out with William H. Macy.
Hell yeah, Zipper!
I would make out with William H. Macy.
Because you're straight too, right?
Yeah.
Okay. He did the hand motion where you kind of like wobble back and forth. That rules. I like people more when they're queer.
all right. Whoa.
I mean, I'm not saying you're not cool. I'm just saying he's cooler than I thought he was.
Okay.
Thanks, Reed.
I love that. Like, in no way am I being like. I sound like I'm dumping on both of you.
Well, with all of that said,
Where are we rating it?
where are we rating this? Yeah, because we got on a far off tangent.
How do we sort Michael Barryte hypothetically making out with William H. Macy?
Oh, that is straight up a Gryffindor. That'd be a dream for me.
All right, look, Reed. Next time I run into William H. Macy, I'll really lay on the charm and I'll try and make out with
You
him
miss all
for
the shots
you.
you don't take, dude. You trying to find love or not?
Man.
Yeah, where's Hateful Eight, guys?
I'm torn between Slytherin and Gryffindor. Because
You can make the argument that it's a Slytherin because, like, the characters are all assholes and crafty.
the movie
and
does feel a little mean-spirited sometimes, but
and it's
in
a bit of a
service-
cautionary tale.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you think that, like, because if it's violence and mean-spiritedness and it doesn't really have a point, that's Slytherin potentially.
That's true. I think it does have a
Because
point.
it'd be just self-serving to, like, I just want to see violence. And, like, there are some films that do that and fulfill that
Right,
purpose.
yeah.
Does this one necessarily, like, make you think about violence and, like, contextualize, like, oh, yeah, like you said, cautionary tale? Probably Gryffindor.
Yeah.
But I'm saying that, like, sight unseen.
It also has the, like, old school, like, filmy vibe of, like, it has an overture and a program and, like, we shot it on cameras that haven't been used in forever. Like,
Yeah.
it has such a, like, it's kind of Ravenclaw-y in that sense of, like, it's really nerding out on you.
Mm-hmm.
But again, that's kind of every Tarantino movie.
Right. It's not a Hufflepuff. I think we can say it's a Gryffindor on the merits of it is violence, but it's justifiable violence. Some characters walk out learning a lesson. There's a discussion and, like, clear commentary on hate, bigotry, racism, sexism, like all
This
of
movie
those
is
realms.
a Gryffindor and a Slytherin stuck in a room with each other.
Yes.
Yeah.
And one of them is going to strangle the other. We just don't know who.
It's Schrodinger's house.
Yes. It's Schrodinger's house. And with that, I would like to thank you, Eric, for joining us in sorting Tarantino's current filmography.
Thank you.
You
It was fun.
If they want to, like, reach out to you on social media, where would they do that?
I can be followed on Twitter at Grog is here, spelled with 2 G's at the beginning. GGROG is here. And I write for Screen Rant.
Yes.
You can find some
check
of those
that out.
articles.
You can follow myself at Belated Media on Twitter. You can follow Reed Brice at That Dang Dingus. Also, That Dang Dingus has a show that is coming up in the Los Angeles area.
Oh hell yeah! We're either still in previews or we've opened. It's called Some Fucking Advice.
Yes.
It's like one of the most progressive shows that the Second City has ever done. It has like 4 or 5 out of, like, the 8 people in the cast are queer in some
From
capacity.
when to when does it run?
We're running from September until December, so you have time. It's like it's a new premium show that's opening up. If you want to come see it, please let me know that you're interested. Because if we're still in previews, I can get you a free ticket.
And you'll likely be tweeting about it a handful of times about shows.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
So if you're following Reed on Twitter, you will be getting all them haps.
Yeah, and probably a lot of, like, other, like, neurotic rants about things.
Yes.
I am a delight.
You're good for all of those things. So thank you very much for joining us on the Sorting Hat podcast. Also, feel free to leave a review for us on Apple Podcasts or Google Play, wherever you listen to your podcasts. Those ratings are helpful to us. Thank you so much for listening. We'll be sorting more later. Bye.
Bye, motherfuckers. We didn't swear enough. I just want to get a few more in.